I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. These words were spoken by Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. To his crowd of those who joined in the March on Washington in the nation and overseas. It was a protest against the system of institutionalized racism, making unemployment a commonality in the black community, but was also symbolic of many other things. King's speech, delivered on August 28, 1963, was a culmination of years of the civil rights movement, with African Americans fighting for their equality. It shed light on the issues faced by people deemed non-human to non-black people. In this speech, he declares what true freedom in our nation looks like. King's speech in ways sets the basis moving forward on what the American dream should be. The I Have a Dream speech is probably one of the most powerful and iconic speeches delivered in American history. His powerful use of rhetoric and his ability to appeal to the emotions of his audience shines through this speech. He begins the speech with saying, I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. This quote, I have a dream, is constantly repeated to double down on King's vision for the future for America paved by justice. His dream is deeply rooted in the American dream, which he himself connects to using the Declaration of Independence, which contradicts this ideal, along with the Emancipation Proclamation. Although all men are created equal, the same did not apply even to the freed African Americans. King also addresses the issue of economic inequality in America, calling for equal opportunities for all. Justice needed to come in the form of equality, racially and economically. He ends his speech calling for freedom throughout the entire nation of America, repeating the phrase, "Let freedom ring." His use of repetition, powerful metaphors, and biblical references make it an inspirational piece that still resonates with people today. King uses many frames to reinforce his argument. Pathos is used to invoke empathy and to connect with his audience. He painted a people unsupported by their nation, labeled free but not treated as such. When he draws upon the Constitution, it also appeals to the values shared by all Americans, the document that gives us rights. In making his idea of the fight for civil rights one rooted in American values, he sought to invoke a sense of compassion and a responsibility to help the fellow American. His use of Christian language and imagery is apparent throughout the entire speech, given his background as a reverend. He also uses his speech to persuade the listener to see one another as interconnected. When speaking on the militancy within the civil rights movement, he uses examples of white marchers as a symbol of their destiny is being tied up with our destiny. This calls for unity is meant to show signs of solidarity and point to the collective responsibility tasked by all Americans, regardless by their color. His dream is one that truly brings all Americans together in harmony. Repetition is also heavily used by King in his speech in a variety of ways. The most prominent is him restating on the famous line, "I have a dream." This line hammers down on the message of King's speech in a way that is timeless and unifies the different elements of his speech. Each repetition of his phrase brings a new dimension to his vision. Over the course of his speech, he conveys an aspect of what his dream is. He conveys an aspect of what his dream is, and each repetition of the phrase is used to bring a new dimension to his vision. Over the course of his speech, he conveys a new aspect to what his dream looks like. This also makes up the use of the phrase, "we can never be satisfied," in order to shed light on the nature of the civil rights movement. With each repetition, specific injustices are described, preaching to the listener that the fight for equality is not complete until all issues are addressed. A sense of urgency is inherent in this speech because "now is the time" is a direct example of this. He uses this expression to express the need for immediate action in addressing issues of racial injustices. He urgently calls the audience to have action throughout the entire speech. He begins by describing a check that they all have come to cash from the nation. This check is physical, but also metaphorical in a way, as what King truly asks is for the security of justice. He explains to the American people that now is the last time to lay down while the world continues to discriminate against others, but to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation. He masterfully uses this anaphoric in his speech in lines like this to emphasize the urgency of what he means to say. Instead of wallowing in the despair of injustice, we should push forward for equality. He metaphorically says, let us not wallow in the valley of despair, to emphasize the urge that we need to have in order to create change. He calls for activists there and at home to go back to specific locations of racial injustice like Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama, and so many more with the intention of knowing that the situations there can be changed. He tells the audience to have hope and faith in his dream, and that the faith we will be able to transform this jangling chord of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. His repetition of "Let freedom ring" to the end of his speech also serves as a call for freedom and equality throughout the nation. In it, he applies that we all, as Americans, should actively work towards realizing his dream.